I'm ready. Got this. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Friday, February 28th. We're done with February already. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by DK. We're brought to you by us. Sign up for Stokastic, whether it's Sims, whether it's Odd Shopper, and you want to sports bet or work on pick'em sites. We've got everything covered for you, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But first, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. DK, what's going on, man? How's your week?
Yeah, week's been going pretty good. I like the slate, 8 games. So yeah, I'm glad it's Friday as well. So ready to talk about it with you.
This is going to be a hell of a slate. I'm happy that you were able to take an hour out of your day to stop letting the world know who the scam cappers are in this world. You are doing God's work there, but now we have to break down a DFS slate. And there are a lot of guys set to play today that might not actually play in the next 2 hours. We're going to have a hell of a time breaking this bad boy down.
Yeah, a lot of Q tags, a lot of moving pieces. So it's gonna be a good late swap slate.
It really is. One game locking at 7, 3 more locking at 7:30, 3 more locking at 8, and then we get a 9 o'clock on DraftKings, plus 2 more on FanDuel. If you're not watching playback tonight for the ridiculousness that Greg and I are going to have to go through for that hour, you are really missing out, my friends, because it's going to be a good one. Well, we got to break it down because we're going to hit a lot of spots where we're going to either have a lot to talk about or not a lot to talk about. There's not a lot of middle ground on this slate right now. So let's get into it. Here we go. Denver Nuggets, first team up. 1-point dogs in Detroit, 239 total. Nuggets are a little tricky right now, but at least they're the 7 o'clock game. Aaron Gordon is questionable with an ankle sprain. There's not a lot of ownership here coming into Denver, even with a pretty nice total. 239 is the third highest on this DraftKings slate. But we're only getting 10% ownership to Nikola Jokic, 10% ownership to Michael Porter Jr., and basically nothing to the rest of Denver. Assuming Aaron Gordon's in, what do you like here in this first game?
Well, we'll start with the obvious, Nikola Jokic. He's sub 10% owned. He's only 12,200. Yeah, I mean, I think Jokic still looks really good here. I think he's going again under owned on the season. He's a 1.8 fantasy point per minute player. So I'm not scared of, Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart, anyone like that. So yeah, I think Jokic looks great. We do have some solid value already on this slate, and I think we will get some more opening up as well.
Yeah.
The only downside I will say about Jokic is it's an early game, right? And you would be locking in a lot of salary. So it's the standalone 6 o'clock Central game. But yeah, I do think sub 10% owned Jokic looks really good here.
Yeah, if I'm getting to anybody from the Nuggets, I think he's the only real guy that I'm going to be looking at. Do you think it frees anything up if Gordon's out? Because I'm not so sure that we're going to get anything like crazy good if he's gone.
I think Westbrook would look a lot better because I think he would just move into the starting lineup and they would go Jamal Murray, Westbrook, Brown, MPJ, and Jokic. So Westbrook's 5,600. He's been coming off the bench playing like mid-20s minutes. I think you'd probably expect around 30 minutes from him if he moves into the starting lineup. So I think he would probably be the guy that benefits the most if Aaron Gordon gets rolled out. And then you probably get a little bit more run for like Strother and Najee, but I don't know if it would be necessary to go to those guys in this slate.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. Yeah, and you mentioned like how it would be if by like locking in Jokic in the early game. But if you're ever going to be locking in early players, I think you'll feel okay about it if it's Jokic. Right. If it's a mid-tier 6K guy, maybe you don't feel as great about it. But if you're locking in arguably the best player on the planet, I can get that. I can get that and handle it. Then we get to Detroit. So Fontecchio back, Dennis Schroeder back. We're getting about 15% ownership to Cade Cunningham. I talked about him a little bit on the strategy show this morning. 10% ownership to Jalen Duren, 10% ownership to Asar Thompson. How are you feeling about Cade there? Sort of the same story. You know, you're going to be locking in a relatively high-priced guy. Obviously, Cade not on the same tier as Jokic. More owned than Jokic. What do you want to do with Cade?
Yeah, I think Cade at 10.2 is going slightly over-owned. Like, I think if I'm gonna go to a spend up in this game, I think I would give the edge to Jokic, especially if he's gonna come in with a bit less ownership. But I mean, Cade's been phenomenal recently. On the year, he's 1.42 fantasy point per minute player. You're probably expecting him to play somewhere in that 36 to 38 minute range in a competitive game. Their true playmaker, right? He's got the ball in his hands a ton, so. I understand why he's getting some love, about 15%. Maybe going against slightly over-owned. The rest of Detroit, Asar Thompson at 5,100, getting around 10% ownership. The potential assists have ticked up for him a little bit of late. We are still waiting on Schroeder, correct? He's probable now. Okay, so either way, though, I think Asar Thompson is if he can avoid foul trouble, you're probably expecting him to play like 26 to 28 minutes. So I think he's like a reasonable play there in the mid-range. Duren does scare me a little bit just because he's super foul prone. And Jokic is on the other side of it. So that does worry me a little bit. But the ceiling is there from Duren. We've seen some big games from him. So he's always someone I have consideration in for tournaments. The rest of the team, I think it's pretty hard to get to anyone with like the fringe guys or the bench guys. They're playing a relatively deep rotation, so not much outside of really Cade and Asar, and a little bit Anderson Duren too.
Yeah, we're on the exact same page here. Cade, clearly the guy I would want to get to, although it being the 7 o'clock game, I'm not as interested. But again, he's Cade Cunningham. He's a 1.5 fantasy point per minute guy. I'm not going to be super mad if I get a bunch of them. And then, Asar and Duren are like 10%ers to me. There's just, in terms of this first game, I think it's pretty easy to just want to be like, okay, I'll just play Jokic and Cade and not really worry too much about the rest of it. You can take Nikola Jokic under 1.5 threes on DraftKings right now. 6.9% historical ROI, 6 odd shopper rating. It's a 5 EV. That's not a bad play right there. I'm not going to be excited to watch Jokic either miss threes or not take threes, but right now, that is the best value play you could find if you're trying to bet on anything from the Nuggets side. On the Pistons end of this one, we're looking at a 4 odd shopper rating on Cade, under 10.5 assists on Fanatics. So the two best guys on both of these teams are also the two plays that we would be looking for if we wanted to try and get some bets down. So that works for me. But in terms of DFS, like, neither one of these teams is getting all that much ownership, and that works for me. This is just not my game as the sole 7 o'clock start. OKC and Atlanta. Thunder, 11-point favorites, 245 total. This is the biggest total on the slate. It's the fastest pace game on the slate. We're getting a Q tag right now to Chet, which will be pretty important. 15% ownership coming into Shea, 20 to Chet, who has a Q tag, and then another 10 to Jalen Williams. We're focused on the 3 best players on OKC right now. Which one do you like the most?
Okay, so the Chet news is obviously important too, right? With him being questionable. I think if he plays, he would be the preferred option. 7,200 is a fair price point for him. The minutes have been solid for Chet in competitive games. He played 32 minutes against Brooklyn, been hovering around 30 minutes in other recent games. So if he does go, I think Chet is the preferred option. Again, it's nice he's got power forward eligibility as well. He was a late add to the injury report today, though. So like I kind of lean that he's out. And if he does get rolled out, then obviously like the other main guys, Shea and J-Dub, look better. And then I think Hartenstein would be a pretty good center play in that scenario if Chet gets rolled out.
Yeah, Hartenstein then's probably getting, a couple extra minutes at 6,300. He'd become a guy that we can get to. Probably starts looking a little bit like Jalen Duren at that point, maybe a little bit better. But I'm with you there. I have Shea ranked 7th. I think his ownership looks good. It's an interesting back and forth between, like, do you want Shea or do you want Cade? I think both of those guys look pretty similar to each other today. So that becomes a very interesting, like, coin flip play because I don't think they look all that dissimilar. Obviously, Shea in a much better matchup. And then, Jalen Williams looks fine. But if we're redistributing 30 minutes of Chet, and we are only going to give a couple to Hartenstein, who else gets the bulk of that? Is that just going to be, 16 minutes of Jalen Williams with a Y, a couple extra minutes of Kenrich Williams, Joe gets 2 more? Like, they're probably just spreading it out to everybody, right?
Yeah, I think they're just spreading it out. Like the big Jalen Williams, I think would get the biggest bump because he kind of played the backup 5, but he's 4,100, can't really go there. And I think they just kind of spread out the minutes from there with these like wings. So
yeah, Yeah, no, I mean, nothing crazy for OKC. Look, if you're playing the Thunder at this point and Chet is in, you're playing the three best dudes. Otherwise, you're probably not getting to much. Anything for Cason Wallace now that his minutes are up? 4K, point guard, shooting guard eligible. He's just not that good of a per minute dude.
Yeah, no, I'm okay on like the guys like Case and Wallace. I think we already have some good value, and I think we could get some really good value opening up too. So yeah, I'll probably pass on Kaysen.
And then on the Atlanta side, they're actually pretty easy to talk about today. We don't really have any interesting news for them. Trae Young's 5% owned. Dyson Daniels is 10% owned. Onyeka Okongwu is 15% owned. He looks pretty interesting to me at 5,600. But how do you feel about Atlanta? Because while they might be getting a decent pace matchup, this fastest game, they are running into a really good defense.
Yeah, not the best spot here. Okongwu is the one guy getting a decent amount of ownership at 5,600, and I think he should be. The minutes have been solid, even with Capella back. He's playing around 30 minutes in competitive games. Decent point per minute player as well, reasonable price point. So, yeah, I think Okongwu is a solid option here in the mid range. The rest of the team, not as interested in like Trae Young at 9,300. I think there's better spend ups in the board. Levert is kind of that high usage guy coming off the bench, 4,900 shooting guard, small forward eligible. I think he's playable in GPPs. If he's playing really well, there's been games where he's pushed for 30 minutes. He played 32 minutes last game against Miami. So I think he's fine in tournaments. Dyson Daniels will be out there a ton, but his price feels about right at 6,700. It's kind of indifferent there. Niang, I guess, would be the only other guy to mention. He's 4,200. The minutes have fluctuated a little bit on him, but we've seen games where he's pushed for 30 minutes as well. So he's another guy that I think you could consider in tournaments. But as you mentioned, really, really bad matchup here against Oklahoma City.
Yeah, like I kind of like these Atlanta guys, like Trae or Levert or Niang, even Daniels to a degree. And I just like Okongwu in general. I'm interested in Atlanta just because of that Brooklyn game from 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago or whenever it was. Like if Brooklyn can be up on OKC for 3 quarters, can Atlanta do it? And then, because if they can, like something's going to look pretty good here. Or does OKC look back at that Brooklyn game and think like, all right, well, we're never going to let that happen again. Let's just clamp that down. Can't be trying to dig ourselves out of that hole. But I don't know. I kind of like Trae as like a GPP pivot because, 25% of the time or whatever Atlanta wins this game, Trae's going to be a big part of it if it happens. But it's not like they look great on paper. I think Okongwu, to me, is probably the guy that's easiest to get to.
Agree.
Let's see if we have any interesting Thunder or Hawks plays on OddsShopper right now. Thunder, we got 2 big ones, but actually, I wouldn't even mind taking these. We've got a 9 OddsShopper rating under 28.5 PRA on Chet, and we have an 8 OddsShopper rating under 8.5 rebounds on Chet. Both of them at BetMGM. They've only been out for about 4 minutes, and given the fact that he's questionable, like I'm happy to take those. Worst case scenario, like if he's out, then whatever, don't have it. He's questionable, so that at least makes you think, okay, well, maybe could be limited in some way as well. 9 OddsShopper rating, 8 OddsShopper rating on a Q-Tag guy. Yeah, I want to get those plays. They might be the 2 best we see. I saw a really big bull play. We'll see if that's still there by the time we get to Phoenix. But the Thunder side, if you want to bet against Chet today, I think that's not the worst idea in the world because of those plays. Atlanta's got a 3 OddsShopper rating under 18.5 PRA on Karis LeVert. So we got 2 games down. Schedule for the rest of the day. I think you've heard this before. We're going to finish this one up at 6 o'clock. We're going to switch it over to live before lock. Greg and maybe EMAC. I actually don't know who's going to be filling in for Eric tonight. He is a little under the weather. And then it is EMAC. Okay, so congratulations to everybody in chat. You have upgraded your Eric tonight on live before lock. Got the better version coming in at 6 o'clock. And then Greg and I on playback.tv/Stokastic. We're going live. We're watching games. It's going to be Denver, Detroit to start because we're not going to have much of a choice. But we're going to have 3 games worth of 7:30 news dropping right around the end of live before lock that we're going to have to deal with on playback. We're going to have 3 more games at 8 o'clock that we're going to have to deal with on playback. There's no better place in this industry to be than playback when we are live to deal with all of the nonsense that shows up. And we can watch basketball while we do it. If you have League Pass, you can link your account. If you don't, we have VIP passes we can hand out to help you out. Worst case scenario, you just hear me and Greg. Totally free. Doesn't cost you anything. Come join us. Link in the description. Game number 3. I wanted this to be the game today, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be the game today. Maybe it will be. Who knows? Cavs, 1.5 point dogs in Boston, 233 total. Cleveland, nothing to worry about here. We're just getting Cleveland. They don't have any injury news. There's 15% ownership coming into Donovan Mitchell at 8,400, point guard, shooting guard eligible, and then no ownership whatsoever coming into the rest of the Cleveland Cavaliers. How do you want to handle Cleveland? How do you feel about that Mitchell ownership?
I was kind of hoping he wasn't going to get any ownership, but I understand why it's happening because Cleveland, they do tend to extend Mitchell a bit against the good teams. So going back and looking at his games against Boston, he played 40 minutes on 11-19. He played, 36 minutes on February 4th. And then there's one other game they played Boston too. I'm looking through it. I think it was, where is it? And then he played 35 minutes on December 1st. So, we talked about a lot on the streams that Cleveland just runs a relatively deep rotation, been taking it easy on the minutes for the main guys. But this is a pretty big game against Boston, and I could definitely see Mitchell pushing for 35 plus minutes here. So he's the guy I like the best. He is getting ownership, unfortunately. I kind of wish I was hoping he wouldn't get any ownership, but yeah, I like the upside here on an $8,400 Donovan Mitchell. The rest of the team, like Garland at 7,600, for me, I would just rather get to Mitchell for a little bit more, even though Mitchell is getting more ownership. Not as interested in Jared Allen. A little bit worried about his minutes. We've seen games against Boston where he hasn't closed, so that does worry me a bit. And high opportunity costs at center. Mobley feels priced right at 8,300. The bench guys probably not going to go there with Ty Jerome or anyone like that. So I think it's basically just Donovan Mitchell for me, and that's it.
Yeah, tough spot for Cleveland matchup wise. Celtics are 26th in pace. Cleveland is 7th. Massive pace down spot. They lose 2.5 possessions below their average. Not surprised to not see a lot of ownership coming in. Always scares me in a matchup that should be competitive. Like, should I be getting a little bit more of these guys if they're going to be playing more? Especially when you see Donovan Mitchell getting 17% ownership and Darius Garland getting 1. Like, just optically, it feels weird, but it's not that I think Cleveland looks great. Like Mitchell might even be a hair over owned for me. I do think he looks like the best Cav, but I don't know. It's a really tough spot to want to get to it. There's so many better spots coming up in this show.
Yeah.
And then we get to Boston, a team that even right now is still tough to talk about. Jaylen Brown, questionable. Luke Cornett, questionable. Kristaps Porzingis, questionable. Have you seen anything on what's up with Luke Cornett?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, same. I assumed it was just like having a kid or something, and then it's just been personal reasons for a couple days. So usually not a good thing. Right now, with everybody in 10% ownership to Jason Tatum, it's basically the same situation as Cleveland, only Tatum's getting the ownership instead of Donovan Mitchell. What do you want to do with Boston if they're in? Do you have any expectations on their Q tags?
Yeah, if everyone's in, there's not much here for me from Boston. As far as the Q tags go, Jaylen Brown was at shoot around, so I'm pretty sure he will play. Porzingis was a late add to the injury report with an illness. I don't really know what to make of that because he missed the game on Tuesday with an illness, and then he played on Wednesday, and then they added him a late add today with an illness on Friday. So I think he's 50-50, and I don't really have a lean on Cornette. I don't really know what's going on there. So that's pretty important. Like, if Porzingis doesn't play, that would open up a lot. You would get Al Horford starting there. And then depending on who's available, like you could see like Boston try to go a double big lineup too against Cleveland. More minutes for a guy like Peyton Pritchard at 5,300. Like Hauser could even be playable as well, 3,900. So things should definitely open up here for Boston if Porzingis is ruled out. But if Porzingis and Brown are both in and it's just Drew Holiday out, there's not a ton here for me that stands out.
Yeah, I don't really see it either. I kind of like Jaylen Brown more than Jason Tatum if they're both in, just because of you save $1,900. Obviously, Jaylen Brown not as good as Jason Tatum, but $1,900 savings, better positionality, half the ownership. If he's in, I'm intrigued. as a GPP option. Jared Allen right now on the Cleveland side with a 4 odd shopper rating, under 11.5 rebounds. That has positive historical ROI. That one's on DraftKings. Darius Garland under 6.5 assists as a 3 odd shopper rating. I wouldn't want to take that because he's better than Cade Cunningham. That should light chat on fire. But yeah, look, I mean, if Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis are both out, then this game is going to look way different for Boston. If they're both in, then I don't think that there's that much to talk about. Lower pace game as well. So we're going to get to a couple spots that are going to be true tire fires. This isn't one of them, but it could be. Do we have any bets for the Celtics? They might be a little tough to recommend right now, depending on who it is. 6 odd shopper rating, under 3.5 threes made for Jason Tatum. I probably don't mind taking that, but that gets a little dicey if Porzingis and Brown are both out.
Right.
So if you're up for risk, 6 odd shopper ratings, no joke. Portland, Brooklyn. Blazers, 2.5 point favorites in Brooklyn, 220 total. Brooklyn has Nick Claxton back. He managed to not get suspended again. Owoman is with the G League team. D'Angelo Russell still out. Welcome back, Cam Thomas. I kind of just assumed he was going to get shut down for the year, and yet here he is. That's craziness to me. Why are they
Cam
playing?
Thomas
It does. Yeah, like I just assumed he was done.
Yeah, there's no real need to bring him back, but whatever.
Because they didn't do a great job bringing him back the last time. Anyway, on the Portland side, Denny questionable, Jeremy Grant questionable, still without Ayton, still without Time Lord. No player in this game, DraftKings or FanDuel, Portland or Brooklyn, is projected for more than 7% ownership right now. We'll start on the Portland side. Q-tag Denny, Q-tag Grant. Do you like anybody if they're in?
If they're in, unfortunately, I do have some interesting Klingon. It hasn't been working out a ton recently, but he's still like a pretty good point per minute player. He's gotten in foul trouble. He got in foul trouble last game. He only put 18 minutes. There's been some blowouts. There's been some games where he hasn't closed as well. Portland will close small at times too, but the ceiling still is there from Klingon. We've seen a couple of 50-plus fantasy point games from him. Like we saw it against Denver right before the break on 212. We know that ceiling is there. With Ayton and Rob Williams out, obviously the minutes are more secure. Like if he avoids foul trouble, I think you're probably expecting like mid-20s minutes in competitive game and, possibly more if he's playing really well. He's averaging a 19.6 rebounds per 100 possessions. So really good rebounder there for Klingon. So, I like his upside in tournaments. Again, minutes not as secure, but at least that ceiling is there. The rest of the team, I mean, everyone seems kind of priced right, assuming they're all in. $60 to $100 for Denny. I had him the other night. That was pretty tilting. He got injured, went to the locker room, came back, and then went right back to the locker room again. Simons is priced up a bit. Yeah, there's really not a ton here. Things would open up, obviously, if one or both of Denny, Jeremy Grant get rolled out, though.
Yeah, if we get them both out, I'm guessing we're going to be playing quite a bit of Delano Banton.
Yeah, so I think if they're both out, like Scoot becomes a pretty good option. Yeah. You'd probably get, I think the starting line, I think they would start Chris Murray too. So they kind of like bring Shaedon Sharpe off the bench. So I think they would go Simon, Scoot, Kamara, Chris Murray, Klingon if they both get ruled out. And then as you mentioned, Banton would play a lot more off the bench. We know he's a good point per minute player. He would stand out as a good value. Shaedon Sharpe would look better at 5,400. Obviously Scoot as well. So these value plays would look a lot better in that scenario.
Let's see if we have any Portland Trailblazers bets right now. This is going to look a lot like Boston. Going to be tough. 6 odd shopper rating, under 3.5 threes for Anthony Simons. Probably don't have too much of an issue taking that one way or the other. Toumani Camara under 1.5 threes. Also a 4 odd shopper rating. Both of those exist on DraftKings. So if you're less worried about that Portland news, decent place coming out of odd shopper for it. Let me get to the Brooklyn side. At least we don't have to worry about any Q tags to talk about them, but these guys are equally as uninteresting. 7% ownership to Cam Johnson is the most we have of anybody on the Nets. I see nothing here. I mean, you want to get 5 to 10% of Cam Johnson or Nick Claxton, at least they're the real basketball players on this team. But after that, I don't know how you click any of these names.
Yeah, it's tough with Claxton coming back and Cam Thomas coming back. Thomas, I assume, will probably be in that like 20 to 25-minute limit. So at 6,600, don't think we can go there. And him being back really kind of hurts everyone. Killian Hayes is 4,300. He's played decent in the starting lineup, but he doesn't look as good, obviously, with Cam Thomas back. Yeah, there's not a ton here. Some of these guys got priced up from when Claxton was out and obviously when Cam Thomas has been out for a while. But yeah, I think this is one of the least appealing teams on the slate. I think if I had to click someone, it probably would be a $6,200 Cam Johnson. Does have small forward, power forward eligibility. He's probably playing in a competitive game 32 to 34 minutes, somewhere in that range. So he's like okay as a last man in, but yeah, there's not a ton I like for Brooklyn. I expect them to run a relatively deep rotation here too.
It's really wild to think about this Brooklyn team and think about what they did last time out, because we got 25 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks. I think he was plus 20 in Day'Ron Sharpe. 62.8 fantasy points in a start against Oklahoma City. And it's just going to be like, all right, Day'Ron, back to the bench you go, brother. Here's 18 minutes. Enjoy yourself. Like, you can't really ask for a better output from someone in as hard of a matchup as you could possibly get. And it means absolutely nothing. It's so crazy to think about. Like, they're not even going to reward him. And he's 5,700. He couldn't be less playable.
I know it is kind of crazy to think about. Like, I think he should be playing more for this team, but whatever.
It's nuts. It's truly nuts. He went out and did that, and it's just like, man, I just need Nick Claxton to foul more people so I can play more.
Right.
Do we have any plays on the Nets? Because these will be real. I'm sure they have nothing. 2 odd shopper rating. Wow. 2 odd shopper rating under 23.5 PRA on Cam Thomas on Caesars. Kind of like that. I have no idea how much this dude's going to play. He played 22 minutes, I think, in both of the games that he came back for. Mm-hmm. He's missed, I don't know, like 2.5 months at this point. So wouldn't mind taking that on the downside play, but maybe they'll just play him 30 minutes. Who the hell knows? It's Brooklyn. Is that real news that just came out? Yep, it must be. That's 2 people now. Porzingis out.
Okay. So that illness must be, yeah. I wonder what he has where it's like that serious, where he missed Tuesday, played Wednesday, and then misses today.
I don't know. And we basically found out he had that illness at 6:58 a week ago or 5 days ago.
We found out, post lock. That was so tilting.
Eric says Porzingis has what I have. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Porzingis doesn't have an infection in his mouth that is making the side of his face swell up, but that would be a very interesting dynamic if that's what he had going on. Jaylen Brown and Luke Cornett still questionable. We go to, I think, the most interesting spot of the day. Toronto, 2-point dogs in Chicago, 232 total. The tricky part here for Toronto is that Scotty Barnes is questionable. Mm-hmm. Everything else injury-wise on the Raptors doesn't matter. Barnes is 10% owned. Barrett's about 10% owned. Do you like anything from Toronto if they're in? Because the matchup's awesome.
Yeah, the matchup is really good. We like targeting players against Chicago. I think an $8,600 Scotty Barnes is a totally reasonable play to get to at the top end here. I think things would get a lot more interesting if he gets ruled out. But yeah, assuming everyone's in, I think like you can get to Barnes, you can get to Barrett. I think quickly to be a little bit overpriced, and I probably wouldn't get to him. And Pirtle, I don't think we can go there yet. I think they're going to kind of ease him back in. First game back by 24 minutes. Again, high opportunity cost at center. So I think it would really just be like Barnes and Barrett. But if Barnes gets ruled out, then Barrett and Quickly, again, look a lot more interesting. With Scotty Barnes off the court, RJ Barrett 1.22 fantasy point per minute player, Emmanuel Quickly 1.16. So those guys would get a bump in usage, more ball handling as well. So they would look a lot better. And then maybe like Grady Dick, I think would be a value play in consideration if Scotty Barnes sits. Probably would expect around 30 minutes from him. 4,500, a reasonable price point. I don't think I would get to anyone else, though. Toronto, again, kind of spreading out the minutes for the rest of those guys. But yeah, Quickly, Barrett, if there's no Barnes, and then I think a little bit interesting Grady Dick.
I think Ochai Agbaji could look a little interesting at that point, too. 4,200, small forward, power forward eligible. I think he got 30 minutes last time out with Barnes out. Am I right?
Yeah.
31,
playing that
actually.
guy.
I'm not a huge fan of it either, but if he's starting, you get 30 minutes at 0.75. He'll be like a 5.4x guy or something like that. He's probably like 10% owned at that point. I think we'd go that direction. I don't think we'd be going to much else. I think you were right in saying that we'd be looking at your RJ Barretts and your Emmanuel Quickleys and your Grady Dicks. That's for sure. Any Jakob Poeltl interest? Just another center in this 5-6K range.
Yeah, I don't think so yet. I think you're probably expecting mid-20s minutes from him. Like the matchup, obviously, but no, with all the other good center plays in the slate, I think I'm going to pass on Poeltl.
All right, now we get to the tricky part.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago Bulls. Let's adjust, crack the back. We need to have a conversation here because I don't know what to do. And we still have weird shit to deal with. Q-Tag Io Dosunmu will matter. Vooch is doubtful. Patrick Williams is still out. Jalen Smith is probable coming out of the concussion protocol. Who's starting at center?
It's a tough one. I think it's 50-50 here because obviously Zach Collins has played extremely well, but Jalen Smith was ahead of Zach Collins before he went down with the concussion. Yeah, I don't have a strong lean here. Either way, though, I think like whoever starts, like they're still not going to play like the Vooch minutes. Like they're not going to play like I don't think like 32 to 34 minutes. Like if it's Jalen Smith that starts, I think you're probably expecting him to play like 24 or 25 minutes. If it's Zach Collins that starts, you're probably expecting like a little more than that. But yeah, so I don't have a strong lean there. Either way, though, I think Jalen Smith looks really good at 3,700. Even if he comes off the bench, again, I expect him to play more. If he starts, I think he probably looks like one of the best values in the slate. So yeah, I think it could be either him or Collins. I don't have a strong take there.
Yeah, if Jalen Smith starts, he's the number one play of the day. He's going to be 75% owned. He's 1.3 fantasy points per minute. He's 3,700. If you project him for 24 minutes, he's like a 10x dude just because, which is insane. If he's coming off the bench, it gets a little scary, but he's still one of the best point per dollar plays. He might still even be just the best point per dollar play on the slate if you give him 20 minutes. So to me, I don't know why he wouldn't be the starter.
Jalen Smith?
Yeah, like they weren't going to be playing Zach Collins at all. If Vooch was in right now and Jalen Smith didn't get hurt for the past 5 days, Vooch would have played 32 minutes. Jalen Smith would have played his 16. They would have moved on. It's not like they acquired Zach Collins because they were like, man, what a great deal. I can't wait to get Zach Collins. No, it was a salary dump. They're punting their season. Jalen Smith is the guy that they want, I think. If it were a lower body injury or a knee injury, then I'd be a little bit more dubious. This is just a concussion. The only reason he wasn't there because they were like, well, your head's dinged up. Otherwise, you're good to go. So I'm very intrigued by it. I'm very intrigued by it. I have no idea. I don't know how to play it. I don't think it's going to matter too much because Jalen Smith is 30% owned right now with the assumption that he's probably the backup. You're still going to have a ton of them. You're going to be able to swap it if you need to in that 7:30 to 8 o'clock window as well if you need to get more. So I think going with the idea that Collins is starting is probably fine. How do you feel about a $5,500 Collins now that we have Jalen Smith back, assuming Collins starts? Because if Smith starts, you cannot play John. It's going to be very hard to play Zach Collins at that point.
Yeah, agree with that. I'm hoping you're right. I am hoping it's Jalen Smith that starts. I have a pretty big bet on his over 16.5 PRA. I took that a couple hours ago. So I am hoping he starts. But yeah, if Zach Collins starts 5,500, I think you're probably expecting like mid to high 20s minutes from him, which would make him in play. 1.21 fantasy point per minute player so far on Chicago. So I think he would be like playable, but he wouldn't be someone I would go out of my way to play just because I don't think you could expect, the 38 minutes that he played against the Clippers.
Yeah.
Just because Jalen Smith is there. Like he was really the only true big the last couple of days. So yeah, he would be in play, but he wouldn't be someone I would be like going to slam into like my lineups or anything.
Also, for reference, Jalen Smith has started one game this season. It was on December 13th. He got 29 minutes. Just obviously, it doesn't matter if he has 20 minutes. If you project him for 24 minutes, he's the overwhelming best play on the slate. Sure. You don't even need 29. So just wanted to put that out there for reference. But that dynamic is wild for today. I'm really curious to see who they end up starting. And then for the rest of this, close to 10% ownership to Giddey. Close to 10% ownership for Kobe White, 10% ownership for Lonzo Ball. What else stands out to you? And how does the Dosunmu Q tag affect the rest of those guys?
Yeah, Giddey's been playing extremely well. The price has come up, but I still think he's in play. Playing big minutes right now. Since returning from break, he's averaging 34 minutes per game, 15.8 potential assists. The usage has been very solid for Giddey as well. He's been shooting the ball pretty well. I don't know if he can continue to shoot this well. Like from 3-point range, 4 for 4 against the Clippers, 3 for 3 against Philly, 3 for 5 against Phoenix, 4 for 6 against New York. Right? I don't think that's sustainable, but still, I think he would be in play for GPPs. Kobe White at 6,600, kind of just indifferent on him. Like you can land him in his last piece in, but yeah, he seems priced about right. $4,600 for Lonzo. I would feel a little bit better about him if Io doesn't play. If Io's in, like he's more of just like a last guy in as well, coming in around 10%. The minutes have been great on Buzelis, so I don't think I can go there. I wish they would play him a little bit more since they have nothing to play for, but the minutes have been kind of all over the place. And then, yeah, if Io gets ruled out, like I said, I think Lonzo looks a little bit better. I think, Herder would play a little bit more off the bench at 4,300. And from what I saw, I kind of lean that Io is out, but that's not a super strong take.
So we've gotten 28, 34, and 30 minutes in the past 3 games for Kevin Herder with no Io Dosunmu. Mm-hmm. You get 28 minutes out of Kevin Herder today at 0.85 fantasy points per minute. He's going to be a pretty interesting value play. Only 4,300, great positionality. I got him at 5.5x in that scenario. I think if we get Dosunmu out, he's going to like 15 to 20% owned.
I don't know if he'll be that high. I think, but I think he would definitely get some ownership, maybe around 10% or so. But yeah, he would be like firmly in play for value. As you mentioned, the role's been pretty solid for him. I think you'd probably expect him to push for high 20s minutes off the bench. So yeah, he would definitely be a decent value for sure.
So keep your eye on this one. We need that starter. Because Jalen Smith's either going to be in every single lineup or he is going to be quite the interesting ownership play if he's coming off the bench. So get ready for it, guys. I'm excited. Nothing like having 2 guys that aren't starting centers in the NBA being the key pivot points of everything that you need. If you guys want to sign up at Stokastic, it's very simple. Jordan will drop a link in chat. Actually, it's already in chat, thanks to Nightbot. There's a link in the description as well. Sign up through one of our partners. If you want our sims for a month, projections, ownership, Discord, all of our simulation tools, you can sign up through DraftKings, FanDuel, Underdog, Chalkboard, Sleeper, Better. I can name a bunch more. There's a giant list. They'll give you something when you sign up, a deposit bonus, bonus bets, whatever that could be. You don't have to pay us anything. We just want you to sign up, follow the instructions on the page. You will get a month free from us. Everything we have on the back end for whichever sport you're looking for on the DFS side. And if you're not looking for it on the DFS side, we have the exact same deal for Odd Shopper and the Portfolio EV tool. Different link. They're both in the description of this video, or at least they should be. So come on in, guys. No matter how you want to be here, Odd Shopper, sports betting, pick'em, or DFS, we've got a deal going right now where you can get in for a month and it won't cost you a single cent to our pockets. If that's not good, I don't know what is. The New York Knicks are 4-point dogs in Memphis, 244 total. I have it as the second fastest game, the second highest total of the day. Knicks, a little tricky. Q-tag Josh Hart, Q-tag Mitchell Robinson, Q-tag Karl Anthony Towns. It's like every team today, man. No ownership coming into the Knicks right now, but that could obviously change depending on how those Q-tags work. Just talk to me about the Knicks in general. What do you see? Where are your leans? You know the drill.
Yeah, so with the Q tags, no strong leans. Oh, I would say I think that Josh Hart will play. Cat, I think, is more 50-50 since he missed last game. Mitchell Robinson is either coming back today or the next game. He's close. So, yeah, looking at ownership, if everyone's in, I do kind of like Cat for tournaments. As you mentioned, it's a high total game. I like the spot here for Cat on the season. He's 1.42 fantasy point per minute player. Like, I don't think you're going to get a lot of a run from Mitchell Robinson if he does play. I think they would have to ease him back, and he's been out for so long. So I think Cat, assuming he plays, is a pretty good tournament play, and then that's really it. Like, Brunson's price is up from when Cat missed, so 9,200 I think is a little overpriced for him. $8,300 for Josh Hart I think is also a bit overpriced. So if everyone's in, I think it's just Cat for me in tournaments. But things obviously are going to get a lot more interesting if one or two of these guys end up getting rolled out. Mainly though, the Cat and Josh Hart.
I wish I had any clue whatsoever how much they're going to play Mitchell Robinson today.
I mean, Tibbs is a crazy person, so I guess you never know, but I don't know. Like, I think probably like if he does play like 15 minutes or so, like mid-teens.
He's got to be so out of shape. He's never in shape to begin with. He's been on an ankle injury. He hasn't played in months. And then all they want to do is bring him back to be the shittiest version of Rudy Gobert and move Towns to the 4. Ugh.
Even when he is healthy, like the guy's always like gasping for air. Like he's been in bad shape, I feel like, his whole career.
Yeah. This will obviously, okay. What are we doing here if Towns is out? Because now Hook Porty's gone. Mitchell Robinson is definitely not playing 28 minutes today as a center in his first game back. What the hell do we do with the Knicks if Towns happens to be out?
I still honestly don't know if it would do a ton for me. I do think Brunson would be in play at 9,200 if Cat's out. Obviously, he gets a usage bump. So he would be in play, but like Hard at 8,300 still would feel probably about right to me. I think Achua would obviously play more, but he's 6,200, so that feels about right. So yeah, if it's just Cat that's out, I think it would probably just be Brunson in play for me, and then that's really it. I mean, could you take like a shot in like one of the wings, like OG or Bridges? I guess, but I don't know if that would be necessary on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, how many minutes do we got to give Precious if Cat's out? 36?
I mean, definitely. I think you definitely expect over 30 from him. I don't know.
Does he play 36 and then Mitchell Robinson plays 12?
Yeah, because they don't really have another big on the roster.
I have Precious Achua. If we ignore Towns and Robinson in this equation, Precious is the next biggest guy. OG Anunoby would be next.
Yeah.
And obviously, we've seen OG Anunoby play the 5. He could well, it's not going to be a fun time against Zach Edey, but like, if he can play the 5 against Joel Embiid in a playoff series, I think he could handle whatever's coming out of here up from Memphis. Trae Young available to play. Okay. Pay attention to the news. Knicks could get real crazy because they might be very short on centers depending on how all of this breaks. Then we get to Memphis. Stop me if you've heard this before, but there's another injury. Desmond Bane is questionable. Gigi Jackson's questionable. 10% ownership coming into the questionable Desmond Bane, and then just shy of 10 on Morant, Jackson, and Santi Aldama, who's gotten quite a bit of minutes over these past 3 games. How you feeling about Memphis? What do you want to do with Bane? Who starts if he's out?
So Bane at 7,400. The minutes have been very solid for him in competitive games. Played 43 minutes against Phoenix there. 38 minutes in regulation. I think he would be a fine play to get to. Ownership at 10%, I think feels about right. If he gets ruled out, they could do a few different things. You could see Luke Kennard shift into the starting lineup. You could see like maybe Vince Williams. I think it would probably be one of those two if he gets rolled out. What do you think?
Let's see. Morant, Jackson. Kennard, right?
I said, yeah, Kennard or Vince Williams is my guess. One of those two. I think Kennard's the most likely.
Vince Williams would really surprise me and would really annoy me after 2 days ago or whenever that was when he played like 12 minutes. They wouldn't go Aldama, right?
I would be pretty surprised if they go Aldama. Yeah. I mean, they have done that before, though, where they've started Aldama at the 3. They've done it before.
Yeah. Kennard makes the most sense to me. I guess Vince Williams like fits the profile of it. I just don't know how ready he is for that role right now. He would be the wild card for it for sure and would look awesome at 3,900 and shooting guards. He would start pulling a lot of ownership. Based on the line right now, Knicks are getting 4. I got the line as basically even, which just kind of leads me to believe that it's the Knicks side that's going to be a problem here. But who do you like the most between Bane, Morant, Jackson, and Aldama if they're in?
Honestly, I think it's Aldama, 5,300. The minutes, as you mentioned, have been pretty good for him in competitive games. He's averaging close to 30 minutes over the last 4 games or so. He's pretty solid point per minute player. So yeah, I think Aldama would probably be the preferred option here for me if everyone's in. Obviously, like Ja and Jaren, I think are playable in GPPs. Ja's been really frustrating for me. I've rostered him a lot recently. Hasn't gone well. It did or went awful against Phoenix for the first like 3 quarters, and then he picked it up in the fourth and went to overtime, salvaged it. So yeah, those two would be playable for GPPs. But yeah, I think Aldama, if everyone's in, would be my favorite option.
If I play a lot of Aldama, today will be the day that he goes back down to the 24-minute mark. It's just that dude's minutes are just every time you see him get 30 in a couple games in a row, all of a sudden it just gets like ripped right out from under him, and I never understand why. So be ready for that. There are no relevant odd shopper plays for the Knicks or the Grizzlies right now. I was just checking them out. Unfortunately, nothing here to point out to you guys. But Josh Hart, Karl Anthony Towns, Mitchell Robinson, Desmond Bane, Q tags. We got a lot to learn here for Knicks and Memphis. So we move it on to Indy and Miami. Pacers are 4-point favorites at Miami, 224 total. Not a lot of ownership coming into this game. Aaron Nesmith got to a little over 10%, and then it's 5 or lower for everybody on the Pacers. We did get some Pacers news earlier today. We are going to be without Benedict Mathurin. He's got a left wrist sprain. TJ McConnell is also questionable. What are you getting to from the Pacers here against Miami?
I do think that Halliburton is interesting for tournaments, especially if McConnell gets ruled out, because McConnell is still questionable, right? Yeah, it's still questionable. Because the potential assists, the ball handling have gone way up for Halliburton with McConnell out over the last 2 games. 84.5 passes made, 27.5 potential assists per game, averaging 37 minutes per game. Last game was a blowout. He lost the last like 3 or so minutes due to the blowouts. He was on pace for about 36 minutes in that game, played 40 the previous. So yeah, $8,500 for Halliburton. I think he would be interesting for me in tournaments right now, basically getting no ownership. You're going to get more ball handling too for Andrew Nembhard. If McConnell gets rolled out, he's 4,600. I think he would look a little bit better. If McConnell's in, I think Naismith is the easiest guy to get to with Mathurin out. I think his minutes are just more secure. We know the Pacers run a relatively deep rotation, but you take Mathurin out, that basically plays like the same position as Naismith. I think you're probably, again, going to feel pretty confident about the minutes there for Naismith. So he's I think the easiest guy to get to. Don't think I'm going to get to like Turner or Siakam on this slate. Maybe like Obi Toppin plays a few extra minutes without Mathurin, but yeah, I think that's it. Again, keep an eye on the McConnell news. I do think that's important. Could open up some viable tournament plays, I think, in the 2 guards with Nembhard and Halliburton.
Yeah, they'll start to get thin in that front or in that backcourt with no Mathurin and no McConnell if he's gone. We saw Ben Shepherd got 29 minutes last time out with no McConnell. You have any interest in him if he's going to be getting like 28 minutes at 3,400?
I don't think you could pay me to roster Ben Shepherd, man. He is just such a bad point per minute player. Again, I go back to this. Like, he was someone that, again, Summer League DFS, he was like a half a fantasy point per minute player. Like, he is just so bad. So, no, I still don't even think I could get to Shepherd in that scenario.
And then we get to Miami. 2 of the 3 guys that we were confident in their minutes are questionable. Bam Adebayo and Andrew Wiggins. And then we have a rest of the team where I don't know who's playing today because it's Miami. I don't know their rotation. I don't think they know their rotation right now. 9% ownership to Hero, 9 to Bam, 5 to Wiggins. Assuming everybody's in, who do you think is playing for the Heat today?
It's a good question, man, because yeah, I got screwed with Kyle Anderson last slate too. I was a little bit annoyed with that just because like Miami, you can never really trust their rotation. He played 1 or 2 minutes, made a turnover, didn't play well, just got benched, never came back. So yeah, if everyone's in, again, I don't have a ton of confidence in their rotation. Last game they started Wiggins, Bam, Hero, Davion, and Ware, who I assume if everyone's in, they'll run that starting lineup back. You saw Duncan Robinson and Haywood Highsmith, who got dusted off, play decent minutes. You saw 1 shift of Jaime Jaquez. You saw like 1 minute of slow-mo and like 1 small shift of Alec Burks. You never know though with this team. Like Larson could play. Maybe they go back to Rozier. Like you truly never know. So yeah, I don't have a ton of confidence in the fringe guys at all. If everyone's in, I think Hero and Bam would probably just be the only guys you can get to. Both hovering around 10%. I think that's fine. Bam's got power forward eligibility. Hero's got the ball in his hands a ton. Has been very solid usage since All-Star break. So those two, I think, would be the guys. I'm kind of hoping they play because I really don't want to deal with it. Like well, I guess if Bam gets rolled out, like Khalil Ware becomes a really good play because then his minutes are way more secure. You probably get Love dusted off. But if I don't want Wiggins to get rolled out because I just don't want to deal with like Duncan, Haka, Slow-Mo, Highsmith. I don't want to deal with that headache.
You didn't even add Burks to that one either.
Burks too, yeah.
Yeah. So like on one hand, it's like, okay, if they're both out, we're freeing up like 65 minutes. Then all of these guys just have to play, right? Until we find out that they don't somehow. You know Kyle Anderson's going to smash today, right?
Oh, yeah. You know it.
He's going to play 26 minutes. He just is.
Feel like that's how it always goes, too.
Yeah. So, look, we need the news, obviously. But if those guys are in, Hero, Bam, Wiggins, and don't look at another name on the Heat.
Yep. Agree.
Aaron Gordon is not expected to play. And Jalen Suggs is out indefinitely with trochlea injury in left knee. I don't know what that body part is. I don't know. I do not know. That's the first time I've ever seen that word before. I would have said that was in my throat, but I think that's a trachea. Tyrese Halliburton under 9.5 assists is a 5 odd shopper rating on BetMGM. Tyrese Halliburton under 3.5 threes made is a 5 odd shopper rating on BetMGM if you're not a big Halliburton fan today. And then on the Miami side, that's going to be basically impossible to do. Yeah, not a single odd shopper rating that is relevant there. Anything else, Pacers or Heat?
No, I think we're ready to move on.
All righty. Final game of the DraftKings slate. The New Orleans Pelicans, 9.5-point dogs in Phoenix, 231 total. We do have some interesting stuff going on in this one because it's the overwhelming most owned game. Pelicans are 135% owned. Phoenix is 170. That is it's 300% of the ownership on the slate. 37.5% of the ownership is coming into this game, and it's the final one for late swaps. Nuts. This is what makes this slate incredible. No Brandon Boston, no CJ McCollum, no Zion Williamson, Grayson Allen doubtful, Bradley Beal out. Wow. 40% ownership to Trey Murphy. 30% ownership to Jordan Hawkins, 20 more to Jose Alvarado, 10 more to Messi, close to 20 on Olynyk, and a little bit more to Carlo Makovich and Bruce Brown. What do you like the most from the Pelicans? Who stands out?
Yeah, a lot to like here. I think factoring in ownership, my favorite play is $5,900 Jose Alvarado. With DeJounte Ingram, Zion, and CJ off the court, 1.41 fantasy point per minute player. Relatively not a huge sample size, 200 minutes, but still. Alvarado expect to start and play good minutes here if the game stays competitive. So I think he looks great. Obviously, Trey Murphy's going to be the go-to guy, 7,900 shooting guard, small forward eligibility. He looks amazing. Olynyk at 5K. They're going to ask him to do a lot more. We know he's a pretty good point per minute player, probably expecting 24, 25 minutes from him. He looks like a really good option. I do think the ownership difference here, ownership gap in Hawkins and Bruce Brown's a bit interesting. 32% ownership to Hawkins, 8% to Bruce Brown. I don't know if that gap should be that wide. Bruce Brown in his most recent game played 29 minutes. So he can push for upper 20s minutes. I think Bruce Brown's a pretty interesting tournament play. Not saying that Jordan Hawkins is a bad play. I just think Brown's going a bit underowned. Makovich at 4,500. I think I would just rather get to some of these other options. Like I'd rather get to Messi for a bit more. I'd rather get to Olynyk for a little bit more. But yeah, this team looks amazing. It's a good matchup too against Phoenix. So yeah, definitely one of the best teams to get to on the slate.
Yeah, there's so many minutes. There's so many shots to go around. Phoenix stinks. So like it's not even with the Pelicans being 9.5-point favorites, like the environment works out really well. Trey Murphy's points prop today is 25.5.
Wild.
I mean, Jordan Hawkins is 14.5. This dude's 4K. There's just, I have no real disagreements with anything that's coming in for the Pels. Yep. I want a bunch of Trey Murphy. The position's great. He's the best player on the team at this point. Hawkins ownership, I mean, he's going to play twice as many minutes as he's expected to at a salary that doesn't represent it. Alvarado scares me a little bit, but I don't mind it too much. I think he just is playing 30 minutes and is well worth the price tag, but he's just always a guy that makes me nervous. Uh, he's always just like live to fly into like the sixth row during a game and get injured.
Yep.
Olynyk looks good. Misi looks good. I like the Bruce Brown. Like, can he just fall into extra minutes play? I mean, there's like 7 legitimately awesome plays from the Pelicans today if you want to get to them. And then we get to Phoenix, which might even be more crazy. Let's just get it out of the way with the best play of the day, or what seems like the best play of the day. Tyus Jones is point guard eligible. He's 3,800, coming off a decent game, I guess, last time out. He's 80% owned right now.
Yep.
I assume it's just get him.
100%. Played 38 minutes last game, 22 potential assists. Minutes more secure with Beal out and obviously Grayson Allen out. So he looks great.
Yeah, to me, there's nothing to even say. He's going to play a ton. They don't have many other choices. Monty Morris also out, so it's not like there's another point guard like that behind him. Hell, Ty Washington's probably the next guy up anyway. But yeah, we saw Tyus Jones play 39 minutes last time out. He doesn't need anything even remotely close to that to be as good as he is here. Free square, guys. Free square. And then we get 30% ownership to Bol, and then 20 more to Nick Richards, Durant, and Booker. How are you managing the rest of the Suns?
Yeah, Bol, I like a good amount here at 5K. I think his minutes are just a bit more secure with Beal out, with Grayson Allen out. So he looks good. Pretty good point per minute player. Booker and KD, we know have a very high ceiling. Like the matchup here, obviously against the Pelicans, both coming in around 20%. Don't have a super strong take there. The minutes have kind of been up and down for Nick Richards. He's viable in tournaments though, because he's not a bad point per minute player. If you get the game where he pushes for 25 plus minutes, he could definitely get you there. The minutes are way down on Royce O'Neal. He's 4,800. Obviously, you expect him to play a bit more here, but still with the recent rotations haven't been great. That's really it though for Phoenix. I think it's just Tyus Bull, Booker, KD, and a little bit Anderson Richards.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all to see all this ownership. I think it's a great idea to have as much of this game as you can so that you could swap at 7:30 and 8 o'clock. Like, load up on it and figure out where you're going to be later. Having a lot of this game makes it easier to get to like whatever happens in Chicago and 10 other spots that have all these Q tags. Hell of a day. That's what the DraftKings slate looks like, guys. I know we're at the top of the hour, so we're running a little long. 2 more to go, both FanDuel specific. We got some ownership coming into the Minnesota side because they're thin as well. So if you're playing on FanDuel, this is a lot of ownership. Q-tag Dante DiVincenzo. No Edwards. No Gobert. No Julius Randle. Bones Highland out with the G League team. 40% ownership to McDaniels. 35 to Reed. 60 to Nickeil Alexander-Walker. 15 to Shannon, Conley, and DiVincenzo. A little bit more to Jalen Clark. I love everything here for Minnesota, obviously. But I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker looks like the best option you can get.
Yep, agree. Shorthanded, great matchup. I do think that DiVincenzo plays. I think he'll be on a similar limit to last game. He played 23 minutes. I think Conley's probably in the mid-20s minutes. But yeah, NAW, I think your best option here. Expect him to play 30-plus minutes. Nice eligibility. He looks great. Naz Reid, McDaniels, obviously get a usage bump here without Anthony Edwards. They look really good. $8,100 for Naz Reid, I think, has a very high ceiling. We've seen games where he's pushed for 40 minutes here recently with how shorthanded they are. Terrence Shannon's played extremely well off the bench. He's 4,200. I think he's viable. DiVincenzo's getting around 10%. I think it's fine, but I don't really see the minutes upside for him. I think Shannon at 4,200, I would prefer slightly there. You'll see a little bit of Luka Garza in the rotation. Don't think it's necessary to go to him, though. Dillingham probably plays a little bit. Again, don't think it's necessary. But yeah, NAW, McDaniels, Naz Reid, I think are 3 amazing plays.
Cornette in, Jaylen Brown in, Denny out, Jeremy Grant out.
Okay, so we're going to get some Portland value.
Yes, we are. I don't know what we're going to get out of Utah. Q-tag John Collins, Q-tag Jordan Clarkson, Q-tag Colin Sexton. They don't really have any ownership right now, but this is an impossible team to break down. We're talking about 100 minutes that are up in the air of 3 like legitimate rotation pieces.
Yeah, they're hard.
I have nothing to say here. It's too hard.
Exactly. Yeah. I think Kessler is playable for tournaments either way. His minutes are basically secure no matter what in competitive games. So you've seen him close blowouts as well. But yeah, they're a hard team to talk about with 3 big Q tags.
Final game of the night is Clippers, Lakers. There's absolutely no ownership coming into this game on the FanDuel side. It's got one of the lowest totals. Actually, it is the lowest total on the slate We still have a Q tag on Norm Powell. Luka's questionable. Jackson Hayes is questionable. LeBron's questionable. Rui's already out. Something's probably happening here in this game, particularly on the Lakers side, that's going to open it up. But again, I don't know how you prepare for that right now.
Yeah. So Clippers side, I mean, even if Powell's out, I really don't think it does much. If Powell's in though, like this team they're just hard to get to. As you mentioned, low total, price points all feel about right. So for the Clippers, for me, there's really not much. The Lakers, I think you're probably going to get one of LeBron or Luka out. Kind of hoping for that. I took a bet last night. Clippers -1.5. It's up to 5.5 now. So I think the betting market's kind of assuming one of those guys are going to sit, but we'll see. If everyone's in, if LeBron and Luka are in, there's not much here. If one of them are out, the other one that plays is going to look good. If they're both out, then you can look to Austin Reeves, who would look great. And then like the value would start looking really interesting, like Dorian Finney-Smith, Jordan Goodwin, maybe Dalton Connect. But yeah, so Lakers are another team that's kind of hard to talk about right now.
Blazers will start Simons, Sharp, Kamara, Murray, Klingon.
Oh, okay. So it's interesting they're going Sharp over Scoot.
Yeah. So that's what we got for them. Chet Holmgren will play today. So we got one on our side. 10 games up, 10 games down. Guys, hit that like button. We have 2,000 people here. Live Before Lock is going to be wild. DK, tell the people where to find you.
Yeah, you guys can find me over on Twitter. That's going to be DK__DFS, doing daily fantasy sports as well as player prop content.
There we go, folks. Hell of a slate. Another hour to break it all down, plus some late swap nonsense coming up from 7 to 8 on playback. Join us, but stay right here. Live Before Lock is coming up next.
Well, maybe it's because your ugly shirt. I thought it was the mayonnaise SpongeBob. I've got 3 SpongeBob shirts, so I wasn't sure which one. I knew I had a SpongeBob shirt, didn't know which one. Yeah.
All right, we're good. And 5 on the hands and 2 tickets to the gun show with Jordan Klein. All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Friday here. I've got a little backlit thing going on here. Sun's going down in Florida. Tried to get the lights on at the beach place, so I don't have the normal what do we call that? The little light, the ring light. Yeah, I'm really good at this, Greg. I've got a ring light, but I need 2. I should get one up here. But I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg as we are bringing you guys a wild slate today. Keep in mind the last 2 games of the night, they're only on the secret site and FanDuel. They are not on DraftKings. We have one 7 o'clock game. So even though news is coming fast and furious, we understand that, we've got Detroit hosting the Denver Nuggets. So we're good there. We have Aaron Gordon doubtful is the only moving part in that game. It would not be, or expectations are that he is out. The Nuggets played last night. They lost to Milwaukee in Milwaukee, 121-112. Most of the starters and Russell Westbrook played heavy minutes. Westbrook played 25, leading the bench. They're tightening their rotation there, but that's the only moving part there. And then we've got pending news in a few places, or question marks. Cam Thomas, how many minutes? He hasn't played in quite some time. Chris Murray, he's really starting. Oh, dear God, what does that mean with the Portland rotation? Abdia out, Jeremy Grant out. What's going on? So hat tip to the guys doing projections tonight. That's all I can say, Greg. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be an interesting one. As far as injury news goes, it's definitely going to be a good night to be tuning into the playback show that Josh and I are going to be doing after this. Shout out to EMAC for filling in for Eric on short notice. Who, credit to Eric, we were on a meeting earlier. It was very clear to me that he was sick. He was barely able to talk while we were on the meeting. And I said, do you want to do the show tonight? And he goes, yes, I'm still going to do the show. And he talked a little bit more. I go, you're not doing the show tonight. And then I messaged you to ask if you could fill in. So I had to save Eric from himself, and he wasn't allowed to do the show today because he would have done it. He was going to be sick. He wasn't going to be able to talk. So thank you for filling in our old pal EMAC for our slightly younger friend, Eric.
Yes. Team Eric, always there to help out in a pinch. Let's kind of go by position here. Is there anything that you're worried about that could change the slate? We won't invoke slate breaking news until about 6:35, but is there anything you're worried about at the moment?
Well, obviously the FanDuel and DraftKings slates are going to be really different in terms of what could potentially break the slate. But I mean, there's so many guys who are questionable that there's so many possibilities for guys who could be ruled out that would massively change the outlook of what the slate could be. So it's the answer is yes, but it's like too many things to list just one. There's like 10 different things that could end up being, really big game changers. I mean, we don't know we have a pretty good idea of what Denver's going to do with their starting lineup and go with Russell Westbrook because we've seen them do that before. That's what they did the last time Aaron Gordon was out. It doesn't mean they have to do it again. They could go ahead and do something else. But yeah, there's definitely different levers they could pull with their starting lineup. As of right now, my expectation is that Russell Westbrook is going to be the starter. And as a result of that, Westbrook shows up a ton when I run lineups through the Sims. So at least in terms of the immediate future, if the Denver Nuggets were to go with a different starting lineup than what's expected, which actually, would you mind, Jordan? Could you pull up the NBA lineups page? This is something that it's free content on the site. So if you guys are looking for it, I know people go to all different places to get your lineups. The place you definitely shouldn't be going to is FanDuel or DraftKings, who give you horrific information with the green check marks and whatnot. I'm telling you, just go to the starting lineups page and Jordan, if you wouldn't mind, can you pull? Okay, yeah, it's on the NBA drop-down menu. And we'll have their notes for the different teams. We're going to have on there what the projected starting lineups are, the confirmed starting lineups. And then you could just see also some of the players who are questionable. So right now, we do have Russell Westbrook projected to start. And you can see some of the notes underneath it. So good resource for people who are sometimes misled by the green check marks on FanDuel and DraftKings. We're anticipating Westbrook starting as of right now, EMAC, and he looks really good.
All right. We would not allow anybody to be misled by green checkmark in the chat, because if he was putting out bad information, we would have to ban him. But he's a good guy in the chat. So 2 different green check marks. One good, one not so trustworthy. I'll let you decide which is which. All righty. So we've got that information there. And then the FanDuel side, too crazy to figure out. You've got the Lakers on a they're on a back-to-back, right? They played yesterday. I lose track of all the games. We were at a fun run yesterday, so I didn't play NBA. But you've got question marks for LeBron and Luka. You also have Jackson Hayes questionable, and then on the Clippers side, you've got Norman Powell questionable. Any one of those guys is going to open a lot of stuff. Oh, by the way, Rui Hachimura is out, so there's plenty of moving parts in that game. And then the Utah game, God only knows who's going to be sitting for Utah. Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, Colin Sexton, all questionable. Colin Sexton hasn't played in quite some time. Lauri Markkanen ruled out for rest. Rudy Gobert is out. Julius Randle is out. We've seen that for some time. Anthony Edwards, he picked up his 16th technical, so he is out for tonight. And Dante DiVincenzo, questionable because back-to-back, and he had missed quite a bit of time there, although I believe it was a hand issue. So I think it was a hand issue, so would worry too much about his conditioning. But or left toe, that's what it was. Sorry. I wouldn't worry too much. He was out for a long time, but odds are he may not play tonight. But circling back to the top, slightly different. There's 3 players that have tremendous fantasy projections tonight, Greg. You've got Nikola Jokic, who is having a season of seasons. And he's the reigning MVP. He's got 3 of the last 4. He's still setting the bar even higher. You have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going against Atlanta. Okay, nice upside. Doesn't hit it as frequently as as Jokic, but you get a 15 to 20% discount. And then you have Cade Cunningham going against Denver. Denver, a mediocre defense. A lot of that is propped up by their home games being played in the thin air of Denver. But I noticed that Jokic is what I would call underrepresented in tournaments tonight. How do you feel about that? Because we should have the value to get to him. Do you want to go over the field? Do you want to make your stand there? Because it's the first game of the night. You're earmarking a ton of salary cap towards him. You're taking away your center slot on FanDuel. You got a little flexibility on DraftKings, but how are you feeling about planting the flag there?
Yeah, so in terms of like planting a flag, I'm overweight to the field on Jokic. So there was a couple of different questions you had asked me within there. So I'm overweight to the field on Jokic. There's a couple of reasons. By the way, Andrew Wiggins was just ruled out. So there's a couple of reasons that I do like getting to Nikola Jokic for today. One of them is I just think, to your point, he looks underrepresented by the field. I show up overweight to him in the Sims when I run it. He comes out looking good in the boom bust tool. There's another aspect of this as well. Could you go to the projections page, Jordan? Yeah, so if you look at the projections for tonight's slate, oh, look at that. We got a fresh projections update from just a minute ago. You'll see here the difference in projection between Nikola Jokic and all of the other players on the slate. It's about 10 fantasy points between him and SGA, who's the second highest projected player. And while he already shows up in a higher amount of lineups than what the field is projected for me, EMAC, there's also the other angle to this where there are so many players who are questionable to play today and more value coming throughout the night. Like we just had Andrew Wiggins, who's ruled out. That's something that we're going to be discussing here in a second. The more players that get ruled out, the more value that opens up means that Jokic would look more and more viable, but he's already going to be locking in the first game on the slate. So there isn't going to be a way for more value to open up to find other guys to pay up for who are going to be better than Jokic. So I think it makes a lot of sense to try to prioritize getting Jokic into lineups because he's only going to look better as more value opens up. I don't know exactly what that value is going to be. There are so many players who are questionable to play right now. I mean, if we go through the list of every single player that's listed here on the injury report really quick, I mean, and just talking about the high-end players, Luka, LeBron, Scotty Barnes, Bam Adebayo, or Bam was actually just ruled in, so nix that. But Josh Hart, Desmond Bane, Wiggins was just ruled out. We still got John Collins listed as questionable, Norman Powell questionable, Ayo Dosunmu questionable. So when you consider, by the way, Vooch officially ruled out again, the more of these players that get ruled out, the easier it would be to fit Jokic into lineups, but you can't reverse engineer getting him into lineups since he already is going to be in the first game. So the short version of your answer, Mac, is I really do want to prioritize getting to Nikola Jokic, who's going to be seeing a slight boost in usage in the absence of Aaron Gordon. And then it's just going to also look better as the night goes on and more players get ruled out, which I assume is probably going to boost the field's exposure to... Man, what is the field? There's only one game locking at 7. I guess the field is probably going to be prioritizing maybe some of the Phoenix guys. Maybe the field is going to have to prioritize, because if we don't get some of this news until like around 8 o'clock, SGA will have already locked. Jokic will have already locked.
Cunningham
if
locks in the first game.
If you don't get your high-priced guys in early, you're kind of drawing thin for options.
Yeah, with two of the three best median fantasy point projections lock in the first game here. So it makes it with Cunningham and with Jokic. So it makes it interesting. I see somebody asking in chat, Jokic on a back-to-back. Not worried about it at all. Denver needs to win. This is last I checked, it was, I think Detroit was favored by about a bucket there. Jokic, when I mentioned having a phenomenal season, literally leveling up in his last 38 games. He has averaged almost 64 DraftKings points and almost 67 FanDuel points. He has 3 games in the 90s, 5 in the 80s, and 9 in the 70s in this stretch. He has 70 or more fantasy points in almost 45% of his games over the last 3 months. So the short question here is, Greg, how over the field do you want to get? I'm hoping for 20% on both. I'm playing both sides tonight. That's sort of my target. If I get more, I'm happy with that. But I would like 20% going in, which should double the DraftKings and 4x the FanDuel projections.
Yeah, so on my initial run that I'd done, which is going to have to updated, I don't know, a gazillion times over the course of the night here. A number's so big that nobody can count that high. So things are going to definitely change over the course of the show. Right now, I have to change lineups to accommodate for whatever the hell that the Miami Heat are going to end up doing, which I'm really interested to see. Our data team, unfortunate situation, have to do Heat projections. Josh had posted about this on Twitter earlier. The Heat rotations are nonsense. Like, they have guys who are going from out of the rotation and playing 27 minutes. They've got guys who are playing 28 minutes. And then Kyle Anderson, he goes from here. I'll pull
Kyle Anderson, Jaime Hawkins, Alec Burks. These are the guys.
Yeah. So Kyle Anderson, for instance, because I know a lot of people, myself included, got burned by him a little bit the other night, and people might look back and go like, "Whoa, what do we like about Kyle Anderson?" Here are the minutes allotments for Kyle Anderson over his last 5 games: 27 minutes, 11 minutes, 8 minutes, 28 minutes. So you think, all right, he just played 28 minutes. He closed that game. He played almost the entire second half. He played well. The Heat are shorthanded. You would think, they're probably going to go back to Kyle Anderson again next game. No. Basically out of the rotation entirely. Plays 1 2-minute rotation. Doesn't play again in the second half. The Heat rotations, it's very tricky because this is a team that's going to be somewhat unavoidable with Wiggins out, but it's very hard to have any kind of confidence in what they're going to do with our projections. So I'm really interested to see what our data team ends up going towards for some of the projections for this team, because there's going to be value that pops up. It's going to be value that makes it even easier to get to Nikola Jokic. It ties into your question because you asked me how much Jokic do I want. I've got about 25% right now. When we have an update for the Miami Heat and I rerun it, I wouldn't be surprised if that means that I get to 30% of Jokic.
All right, that's key. That is key. All right, we'll take a beat here. We're gonna have some fun. We've got plenty of time. We're gonna go back to the guard position here, but I do want to remind everybody this is the very last second that for $1 for the rest of today you can get any NBA package.
Oh no, you're looking at the wrong.
I looked at the sheet and it said that in there.
It's not there. You're looking at the wrong thing.
Then I'm gonna say, you know what we do have? The link join. And you know what's better about the link join? We've added 2 sides to it. I'm guessing a lot of you are not yet at Chalkboard. That is now an offering here. So if you go to the link that we will drop into the Stokastic chat here, if you sign up through our link, that's the key. You got to go through our link. You will then follow the instructions that are on the page, and then you will have access to 1 free month of Stokastic Sims single sport, your choice. We've got MLB coming up right around the corner. We're in the full swing of NBA. You can stack these. Say there's 3 sites on there that you wanted to sign up for. Sign up for 3 of them. You could get 1 month of NBA, 2 of MLB. The world is your oyster here, but go into that link. You'll see it's simple. Sign up through our link. We need a screenshot of your welcome email and your first settled wager or pick'em card. That goes to support@stokastic.com, and then we will get you set up with your choice of any single sport full max package. Phenomenal deal out there. But again, 2 new sites available for you. Enjoy. That is the
and I see somebody in chat, Steve McGee asked, what is Chalkboard? It's pick'em site. So if you live in a state that doesn't have sports betting, there's a pretty good chance you have access to pick'em. And Chalkboard, a lot of these sites too have you see so Chalkboard has a 100% deposit match bonus up to $100. They also have free squares there. So if you were to sign up at Chalkboard with the link down below, you get up to $100 in deposit bonus money over there, and you get a free month of an NBA core package. So lots of benefits there beyond just getting the free month. You also get the deposit bonus. So it's like you could get $200 or $250 in free money from some of these sites. And then on top of it, you also get a free month of core access. So if you guys are looking to play NBA DFS down the stretch of the season, this is going to be the best bang for your buck to get in the door.
Right. And then one more thing for Chalkboard, they are often doing daily discounts frequently. And if you set up the mobile device, it gives you messages and lets you know when they are available. So that is one thing that is a plus for their site, because I know a lot of you guys are not on there, but definitely turn your notifications on if you're playing on Chalkboard. All right, the guards. We hinted around SGA, not quite as awesome as Jokic, but still pretty darn impressive. 5-figure player there. Kate Cunningham, also a 5-figure player there. How are you feeling about those guys? And then we can work our way down the guards pricing list.
Yeah. Well, let me check really quick. Do we have that projections update for the Miami Heat? Because I'm very interested to see what it is. Not quite yet, because I'm dying to see who it is that we give minutes to. The real impossible task. I think I saw Rich in the chat on projections today.
He is the John Wick of the day with the impossible task.
Good luck, sir. Good luck, sir. We are going to be counting on you. We trust in you, and you have been given a near impossible task to figure out what the Miami Heat are going to do with the goofballs who are going to be playing rotation minutes for them. Apologies. What was the question again, Emac?
Let's work our way down the guards. We talked about the top end, but we can maneuver our way down there because we're going to talk a little Tyler Hero, I'm sure, because he stands out regardless of what happens with those Heat minutes.
For sure. So there's a couple of guards that just immediately stand out. And one of them, somebody who I was surprised he didn't end up coming in more popular last night. But Tyus Jones, Matt and I were talking about on the show last night. If Bradley Beal was out, we were pretty confident Tyus Jones was going to start. He was really cheap yesterday. He projected really well in our projections, and just people didn't really, he was like barely over him. And he was projected for, depending on the contest, but it was, I mean, we had him projected for like high 20s fantasy points at a 4K price point. He came in at just around 20% owned in most contests last night on DraftKings. And once again, Bradley Beal is out. The assumption is going to be Tyus Jones starting here. He is massively popular, but I think that he's close to all in play for me. I have him over 90% of my lineups right now. He's one of these guys too who projects so well that he kind of almost breaks the ownership projections, where like I don't think he's actually going to be 73% owned. I think he'll be somewhere probably in the neighborhood of like 50-ish% or something like that. Obviously still a lot, but to me, Tyus Jones is the best overall play on the slate and somebody who's going to be in all of my lineups, or if not all of my lineups, close to them. The only reason that he might be in less than 100% of lineups for me is just because more value options are going to be opening up as we go here. As things stand right now, he looks really, really strong. And then Russell Westbrook's the other one who, I'm surprised another one. Russell Westbrook projected for sub 20% ownership, assuming he does start for Denver today. I mean, he's relatively cheaply priced considering what he's done in other starts this year. The total's pretty high. It should be a competitive game. So those are the two real priorities for me at guard. One of them, really chalk, is an obvious one. Not to say Russell Westbrook isn't pulling some ownership. He should just be pulling way more ownership.
All right. Those, I think, are two excellent call-outs there. How quickly some may have forgotten the Russell Westbrook experience that we got when Aaron Gordon was out with that soft tissue lower leg injury. I believe it was calf/Achilles. But that was, 6-7 weeks ago. Sometimes NBA feels quick. Sometimes it goes by much more quickly than we expect. Fortunately, we have Live Before Lock to help us out because everything gets turned upon its head. We are 3 minutes away from the next NBA injury update, which should give us another flood of news. Not to fear, only one game locking at 7 o'clock tonight. That is Denver at Detroit. So we will have time to make some updates. Greg hit on the bona fides there for playing Russell Westbrook. Anything else as you look a little cheaper at the guard spot? Tyus Jones is going to collect a lot of that popularity. Looks like he's going to be north of 60% on both sides tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Tyus Jones is the really obvious one. There isn't, is there like a particular price point that you have in mind?
No, kind of that. Well, when I start looking at the fantasy point per dollars, I mean, you get like a Jordan Hawkins, a Jose Alvarado. We're seeing, that we just saw them play Phoenix in the last game. You hit on Russell Westbrook. I would stay away from the Cleveland Boston side. That's just going to be a rock fight, not particularly appealing at this point. But sort of the counter or the other side of the Tyus Jones there, you get a little bit of in-game synergy. Unintentionally, but you will get it because Jones is going to be on so many lineups that we're putting forth here.
Yeah. So as far as other cheap guards, there's nobody who's even close to a priority like Tyus Jones is. Jordan Hawkins, you mentioned him, but just because the Pelicans are going to be shorthanded on the tail end of a back-to-back, no Zion. Jordan Hawkins is somebody who we've seen. He's somebody who's at least willing to take shots. He's no good from a real-life perspective, but he's willing to shoot. So he's somebody who has a little bit of upside for DFS perspective. He's pretty cheap at 4K. As far as other guys who are really cheap at the guard spots, like I get a couple lineups with Lonzo Ball. I get a couple of lineups with Nesmith, who is guard eligibility, but nothing really super significant. And I've got around 20% of Jordan Hawkins, so not all that much different from the field. On the cheap end, it's really just Tyus Jones that's the priority there.
All right. One other guy, and I see chat's mentioning him, is Shaedon Sharpe, who is going to be in the starting lineup, I believe. He's coming off a 50 fantasy point game. He is heavily weighted, or his fantasy production is heavily weighted towards his scoring. But he did take 26 shots against the Wizards. He made half of them, got himself up to 36 points. Probably we shouldn't expect that, but he does have a path to 40 fantasy points. And that's kind of going to be the target outcome of players that you're putting in your lineup tonight. You want them to have a decent chance at 40 fantasy points. You do not want it to be out of the realm of possibility, because we should see some pretty crazy scores tonight. And with the larger player pools, particularly on FanDuel, you are going to be able to have plenty of options. So you don't want to hem yourself into anything in particular. And if you're using the stochastic tools, well, they're going to do the heavy lifting for you and guide you away from some of those traps.
Yeah, and by the way, related to Shaedon Sharpe, because Denny Avdija is out, we do have projections updated for Portland now. We've got projections updated for Miami, and you'll see when you asked me about cheap guards, I wasn't considering $5,400 as within the price point that you were asking me about, but we now have Sharpe at $5,400 on DraftKings, projected for 33.5 fantasy points. So he's one of the top plays on both DraftKings and FanDuel now that Denny Avdija has been confirmed out. But I wasn't thinking of him in terms of like really cheap punt options when we were bringing that up there. So you see here, yeah, we got Sharpen for 33.5 fantasy points. So points per dollar, he looks really good. Kind of the Blazers across the board look like a really good team to be getting to now, where you've got Delano Banton off the bench. He's projecting really well. You've got Scoot Henderson. He's somebody who stands to gain some extra playing time. What I really want to see here, Emac, like I mentioned before, should we look at the Miami Heat now? And then we got some questions answered in Discord.
I think we should, because I've got it filtered on that as well. So we're good to go here, sir.
All right. Let's look at the Miami Heat, where we've got
Hillel.
Yeah, no real surprises. Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo both projected for a bunch of fantasy points. What I'm really interested in is the cheap guys, which we haven't taken any real stand on, which I understand. Like, there's nobody I feel super confident from the Heat. I think there's a good chance one of these guys goes off. It could be Kyle Anderson again, right? It happened just a couple of games ago that he played really well, and then he was out of the rotation the next game. I don't mind taking shots on Kyle Anderson or Jaime Jaquez Jr., but I do also understand that in our projections, it's hard to project any one guy who's cheap for 30 minutes, because while there's a pretty good chance, almost a certainty, that one or two of these guys for cheap is going to play around 30 minutes and put up a good fantasy game, it is so difficult to figure out who it's going to be. If I have to roster one of these guys and just give it out as my guy to be going to in lineups, I'm going to lean towards Kyle Anderson, but it's with like a 1 out of 10 level of confidence.
Right. So we are projecting, for those wondering, Haywood Highsmith to get the start here for Wiggins, Davion Mitchell remaining in the starting lineup, and then Hero, Adebayo, and Ware. Apparently we have a starting lineup for Denver, and it is not Russell Westbrook.
Let's see. What do we get?
Zeke Naji.
Well, look at that. Well, that changes. Like I said before, that changes a lot. Russell Westbrook still viable, but starting lineup, if that is the case with the starters, yeah, here it is. Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Michael Porter Jr., Zeke Naji, Nikola Jokic. Well, now Russell Westbrook, who I said before I thought was well under-owned on the slate, Scotty Barnes, and now we just found out he's still in play, but I don't look at him the same way that I did a few minutes ago.
So let's talk about Scotty Barnes first for a second here. He missed just one game, kind of came sort of out of nowhere with the sore hip. Was not a late scratch, but a later scratch. They did not talk about that being more than a one game issue. Clearly it's not, but we have seen Toronto resting players down the stretch multiple times over the last several seasons. So that's probably what we saw there. Jakob Poeltl did come back. He played 24 minutes. He had missed, I want to say, around 8 games. They've said he's going to be on a minutes limit as they start to work him back in, so he doesn't really move the needle much. Things just get a little more crowded there. You've got RJ Barrett. There are better plays tonight. There, Emmanuel quickly, also better plays tonight. One of the plays I picked up on for the Pick'em sites earlier today using OddsShopper, Greg, was under 2.5 3-pointers for Emmanuel quickly. I didn't like where the juice was, so I went over to the Pick'em sites and paired it with one other wager I liked. Yes, not optimizing the high upside, but I'm looking for kind of that grind it out as we talk about by utilizing OddsShopper. And I only have one sportsbook in my state. That would be Hard Rock, and Hard Rock sometimes screws the bleepity bleep bleep out of you with their hold and some of their offerings and even their bonuses. So I've started looking more at the Pick'em sites to pair things together to get that cash game effect, which that was one I looked at today. But you guys got to check out OddsShopper. Pretty darn good tools there. And did you know if you put up more than 1,000 in net earnings via OddsShopper, we'll give you a free month of it. That was a pretty cool thing that I saw Laffy talking about on Twitter.
If people want Jordan, can you put the 7-day, just to make it easier for people to find the link, because some people have been saying that it's hard to find the links in the description box. So yeah, Jordan, just throw that link into the YouTube chat. That's why we started to do that a little bit more over the last few days, is just to make it easier for you guys to find those links, because yeah, sometimes it's hard to find things in the hidden wonders of the YouTube description box down below. But yeah, 7-day free trial for the OddsShopper portfolio EV tools. People are also asking us about Zeke Naji, which pretty reasonable for people to want to be considering him now that he is going to be starting. Let's see, what have we gotten out of Zeke Naji in his previous starts? He made a start not all that long ago, didn't he, Emac?
He did. I'm trying to get there. He had a start on the 12th where he had 44 fantasy points, DraftKings, 38 on 44 FanDuel, 38 on DraftKings. He had another start back on February 3rd where he only had 20 fantasy points. That is what's called your mileage may vary, but it is nice seeing that 40 fantasy points potentially in his bag here. We'll have to see how that plays out. I'm guessing we're projecting him for like what, 27, 28 would be my guess.
We haven't updated. I don't think, Jordan, if you go to the projected lineups page, I don't think we have the update in quite yet for the Denver starting lineup. I want to look at, okay, so we had those 2 starts, February 12th and February 3rd. Those were the 2 starts that we had from Zeke Naji. Right. And in those games, who else was out? Okay, Aaron Gordon, Russell Westbrook was out as well in that last start where he played a ton. Yeah. So as of right now, we don't have the projections updated quite yet for Zeke Naji. Start before that where he played 31 minutes. Also, Gordon and Westbrook were out. All right. So we've got one similar circumstance to the last 2 starts that Zeke Naji made. Aaron Gordon was out in both of those, but Russell Westbrook was also out in both of those games. So while you might look at these games and say, well, we got 31 and 37 minutes out of Zeke Naji, some of those minutes are going to go Russell Westbrook today. I don't think we see quite as many minutes out of Zeke Naji. There's still a willingness to play him a decent amount of minutes, though. So we'll see where our projection comes in. I'll think it's going to be more in the mid to high 20s range, maybe looking at like 26 minutes or something like that out of Zeke Naji. It's going to probably have him projected for like 18, 19 fantasy points. He's not the best fantasy producer in the world or anything like that. He's a viable option. The one caveat that I'm going to say about not wanting to go too crazy with Zeke Naji is here's something different with Nikola Jokic and Zeke Naji in the first game on the slate. If more value opens up later, there isn't going to be a better pay-up option than Nikola Jokic. But if more value opens up later, it's very likely there's going to be a lot of better value options than Zeke Naji. So if he's in a few lineups, that's okay. But I'm not going to want to prioritize him over what I think the potential value is going to be later.
No, that's a very good call out there. So good times. And chat, relax. One game starts at 7. We're going to have 30 minutes and the slate's going to turn on its head again. That's why we've got playback. You're going to get Josh. You're going to get Greg talking about all of the updates before the 7:30 games and before the 8 o'clock games. Everybody collective, deep breath on a Friday as we say goodbye to February and hello to March tomorrow.
This is going to be the 130th time that EMAC has seen that calendar turn from February to March, which he knows from experience. That's where the weather starts to get a little bit warmer. He knows these things. It does. A seasoned veteran of the change in seasons.
Oh, a seasoned veteran. I see what you did there, and I approve of that wholeheartedly. So let's see. Let's do this.
We got some questions in Discord as well. One here from Coach DFS. And I saw this question earlier. I didn't want to answer it right away at the top of the show just because I knew a lot could potentially change here. But he wanted to know, who are the top locks for DK GPP plays? So on the high end, I'm absolutely going to go with Nikola Jokic. And we got still pretty modest ownership on Jokic, even as more value is opening up. We've got him at 15% owned right now. Tyus Jones is going to be another one for me, Shaedon Sharpe. So different guys in different price ranges, really cheap. Tyus Jones, best looking value option right now. Shaedon Sharpe, the best mid-range play. And then I really want to be well overweight to the field on a 15% owned Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, that's those. I would heavily concur on that. By the way, just doing some quick math. I had to use my fingers. I had to take my shoes off. 36th year I've played fantasy basketball, by the way. 36 years. Started in 1989. Just saying, there's a little value in having seen this morphing from pen and paper to the crazy DFS world, but seen it all. This is like my great grandmother who literally rode into the state of Washington on a horse and carriage. And ultimately, I remember going on a plane ride with her when I was 4. That was the first time she'd ever been on a plane. So
this might be ignorant of me, but I assumed that when you were a kid, horses weren't invented yet. I didn't know. I didn't know they had them back then. They were invented.
Well, they disappeared for a while. That's why we had to come up with the horseless carriage. But nobody knows where they went. But me and this guy named John Henry. I get those guys confused. I was working with a steel driving man and a guy creating the horseless carriage.
Yeah, you got a car maker, like an athlete and a fictional character all mixed together.
Just, for fun, because, when we get old, I'm sundowning right now, not making fun of that, but kind of making fun of that. But yes, the sun goes down. I kind of lose my marbles, unfortunately.
We've got a projections update now for the Denver Nuggets, by the way. So I see Jordan is quick to pull this up on screen here. And for Denver, let's see, what did we end up doing with Zeke Naji? All right. Yeah. So we've got Zeke Naji in for 28 minutes. I had said, I thought 26 was a reasonable number, 28 also, right within that striking range. What's most interesting to me here, in addition to Zeke Naji's minutes, is if we're giving Zeke Naji 28 minutes, it does kind of limit how many minutes you could then project Russell Westbrook for. So in 28 and a half minutes, Westbrook still looks viable, but doesn't look nearly as strong to play as what he did before. Let me see on my template. What do we have for... We had Westbrook. Yeah, we had Westbrook previously projected for 32 fantasy points and change. So we're looking at a pretty decent reduction in the projection for Russell Westbrook. I mean, we're looking at about 3 less fantasy points. That's going to make a really big difference for NBA DFS. So Russell Westbrook, while still in play, he's just a guy on the slate. He's not somebody I want to prioritize anymore.
All right. As time is ticking, 18 minutes now, no fooling around for the rest of the show. Pivot position. We have given all the hosannas out there possible to Nikola Jokic. What else do you see? What are you waiting for? There's going to be crazy on the late slate because we've got a lot of potential front court players out for the final 2 games. But looking at the DraftKings side of things, what are you seeing?
And you're asking me what it is that I'm waiting on
at centers. What do you like at centers aside from Jokic?
Okay, so centers aside from Jokic. All right, so other than Jokic, I mean, there's some pretty obvious ones here to be looking at. I think that Zach Collins, I know that we've got Jalen Smith pulling a good amount of ownership now, and Zach Collins has been, killing it in the absence of Nikola Vucevic. And part of it, too, is that Jalen Smith has been out. So Collins has kind of been the only guy that the Bulls been playing at center. Considering that Collins is about half of the ownership that Jalen Smith has, I think that's a pretty good pivot/leverage play. If Zach Collins goes out and has another big game, that's also going to come at the expense of a really chalky Jalen Smith. So while Jalen Smith is the better cash game play, for GPPs, I like getting to Zach Collins as a pivot play if I'm looking to go more in the mid-range. For cheap, you could still go and get yourself some exposure to Jalen Smith, but there aren't any other super cheap centers that I'm dying to play right now. We've got a lot of good value at other positions. Center, at least as of right now, isn't the best value spot. My preference, I know you said outside of Jokic, but my preference really is at center to be paying up for Jokic.
Just double checking here. So we per our starting lineups page, we are assuming it is Zach Collins. I think that makes sense. Going with the 29 and 19 minute split, 48 minutes split between those 2 guys there, with Vooch unlikely to play. I saw some people talking about playing both those guys in the same lineup. I am okay with it, but I don't think the Sims are going to push you there with the way other things have happened today, especially with Tyus Jones popping up on DraftKings. I could see getting there on like your cash game lineup, perhaps a little bit better on FanDuel where you can get Collins at power forward. But I think there will be better plays, but that was a question I saw popping up there.
Yeah. Did you see the super chats that we got there?
I will set those up right now.
Pull those up. We'll answer some super chats, and then also we've got some Discord questions. So after we read off the super chats, we'll get into some of the Discord questions as well. And I am running a sim update now for the new Denver starting lineup with our updated projections. So I'll see what that ends up bringing to us. What were those super chats?
Sure. We have Jordan Klein, member for 48 months. He says, hit that like button. Hit that like button. Come on. We've got 2,800 people watching. We can get to 500 likes pretty easily. We have Clintwood 83 says he's getting off work late. Can he fade the first game for DK cash and single entry? The only player you are really fading is Nikola Jokic, and I think he's an excellent linchpin for tonight. I think you can put him in your lineups and then figure the rest out with the remaining games. If you are crunched for time, that would be my approach. But yes, you can skip him if you so choose. And then Nuke of the Night, this is from 1-2. He says Jordan Klein is like a vacuum cleaner.
Well, he says he said a Jordan Klein sucks BTW, by the way. I don't know if that if that is something that's too hip for you, but BTW, Emac, that means by the way. Yeah, absolutely. Jordan, play the animation. All right, Emac, you're kind of the guest of honor around here. So I want to know from you first, who are you going to call your nuke of the night?
All right, since I've expressed my love for Nikola Jokic, you can't spell nuke without Nikola, just saying, but it's going to be Josh Giddey. So Josh Giddey is someone that is in that sweet spot in the pricing. He has 40 fantasy point upside. Heck, he's got 50 fantasy point upside. We saw him do that in 3 of his last 4 games. The game where he didn't, 46 fantasy points. That's pretty good. We still have Jokic out, and we've got Toronto being one of the better pace teams and one of the worst offensive teams, regardless of which time frame you pick. And that also doesn't really matter if Jakob Poeltl is back. So Josh Giddey in that sweet spot, 8,100 on DK, 8,600 on FanDuel. That is my nuke of the night.
All right. No issues with that for myself. Let me see, which direction do I want to go with my answer? I'm still kind of inclined to go with Jokic as my answer here for kind of the reasons that I've iterated throughout the show here. But I'll throw out another option who I'm finding myself getting to a pretty good amount of. Chet Holmgren, who was initially listed as questionable for today, but he's going to be playing. There's always risk of blowout anytime OKC steps on the court. But Chet has a pretty good matchup tonight against the Atlanta Hawks. His price still hasn't come all the way up from the time that he missed while he was out with an injury. But I don't really think we have significant restrictions on Chet Holmgren at this point in time. And he's somebody else who I'm coming in pretty well overweight to the field to. And going forward, I would expect him to be a little bit more expensive than this. So give me Chet Holmgren as a player who we've only got projected for 16% ownership, who I have over 30% of at the moment.
Nice. That's why we call it the nuke of the night. Getting a little over our skis on some of these here. All right. I see somebody asking, would you play Najee and Jokic in the same lineup? I'd probably skip Najee just because I think better options are going to appear in the later games.
Yeah, if you're somebody who's playing, like 20 plus lineups and you have some exposure to Zeke Najee, like I'll have some. He's just not a priority on the slate. I wouldn't play him in cash games. I wouldn't play him in single entry either. It's like you said, there's going to be better options that open up later. He's not unplayable, just better directions to go to for a single entry lineup.
All right. Do you have the Discord up? Are they adding you?
I do. All right. The next question we have from Discord, it is from Blinky. He wants to know, for a FanDuel GPP, what's the cheap chalk to avoid to get different? Is playing Cunningham and SGA and fading Jones a viable strategy? No, I would not fade Tyus Jones today. I know that people often see somebody who's really popular and just say like, hey, I don't want to play this guy. But assuming he starts, Tyus Jones is just underpriced. This is somebody who is like 5,600 to low 6K price point earlier in the season when he was starting. Play Tyus Jones. You don't have to just fade chalk players. One thing you could do is you could find somebody who doesn't have all that much ownership going to them. You could play that guy. If you play 1% owned guy in a lineup, it doesn't even be that. Let's say you play 8% owned guy in a lineup, and otherwise you're playing a good amount of chalk guys. You probably have a relatively unique lineup. I think people try to fade the chalk too frequently in NBA DFS when oftentimes the chalk is relatively consistent. Sometimes shit goes awry. Players get hurt. Players get in foul trouble. Guys get scratched with no warning or anything like that. In general, though, you should be playing the chalk more often than not. So if we go ahead and look at the top overall owned players for the slate, starting with DraftKings, there's only 3 guys who are more than 30% on: Trey Murphy, Shaedon Sharpe, Tyus Jones. I think they're all pretty good looking options. If you go over to FanDuel, you've got Naz Reid, Tyus Jones, Jaden McDaniels, Shaedon Sharpe, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think all of those guys are pretty reasonable as well. I know he said, what is the cheap chalk to avoid to get different? There's literally only one cheap chalky player or 2 cheap chalky players on the slate on FanDuel: Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Tyus Jones. I wouldn't fade either of them. I think both of them are really strong options.
Yeah, and I think even going with someone like, I'm just running my FanDuel ones here, Josh Giddey, 5.6%. Hit the ROI up a little bit here. Get him to 16%. That's 3x the field. Comfortable with that. Can start playing around with that as we get it into the games before 7:30 and tweaking that. But there's an example where the nuke of the night can get you some differentiation there. So tonight we're seeing there's enough spots, like Greg said, it's the combinatorial ownership that you want to look at here. So 1 or 2 players that are, in that single digits, and you're going to be on your way to having a semi-unique lineup. Then it comes into similar scoring, etc., things like that, where we see people at the top, tied with a 3v3 or a 4v4. But that's kind of what can happen there. Anything else from the old Discord?
Yeah, bunch of questions. I'll go through these pretty quickly, and then I assume there's probably super chats there, Emac. So let me know what those are after we rattle off these. And I can just answer these myself. Valentino, okay. What setting do I recommend for the $40 single entry? Yeah, $40 single entry. Assuming you mean the contest archetype, go in between marquee and high stakes for that, the setting in between. I think that'll be your best bet for the $40. M. Grizzly wants to know, am I down boosting anybody in the first game on the slate? And then am I up boosting anybody in that game other than Jokic? Only player I'm up boosting from the first game is Jokic. As far as down boosting, I am going to want to downgrade Russell Westbrook and Zeke Naji a little bit so I don't have too much of them coming into my lineups. Modub T wants to know, do I like Collins or Okongwu better as a utility option? Yeah, I prefer Zach Collins. Both of them look pretty similar. The difference is Collins is giving you actual leverage over Jalen Smith, who's really not like crazy popular today, but he's somewhat popular for the DraftKings slate. Then Rabashua says, for a FanDuel GPP, do I think Brunson should be 1/10 the ownership of Hero? And then does Hunter get showcased on Boston tonight to prove the value of the trade? No, I don't think teams really care about that. If DeAndre Hunter plays well, I think he plays extended minutes. If he struggles, then I think his minutes get somewhat limited. It's a game that matters a lot for the standings. It's really important for these teams to win. I think they're going to optimize winning. They're not going to optimize trying to prove a point that they made out well at the trade deadline or something like that. As far as Brunson, yeah, I think it's reasonable to say that Tyler Hero doesn't outscore him at a 10-1 clip. I think that's a reasonable take.
All right. Super chat. Top play at every position on FanDuel. Tyus Jones is going to be your point guard. You've got some options at wings here with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels. They're in the later game. That also gives you some access to any of the foolishness that's going to happen with the battle for Los Angeles. Keep in mind, we haven't talked a lot about those two games, the Minnesota, Utah, and then the Los Angeles game because it's not on the DraftKings slate. But that gives you a little time to figure stuff out. Naz Reid looks interesting at power forward. If we are looking for a discount dandy at the wing position, it's going to be Shaedon Sharpe. I think Tyler Hero and Josh Giddey are your players to look at for that 50 fantasy point upside that not enough of the field is getting to. And then randomly, I'm getting a ton of Khalil Ware on FanDuel with my 150 that I just uploaded, Craig. Did not see that one coming. 27, I think 27% was my number. There.
Let me see.
25%, doubling the field.
I don't have very much of Khalil Ware. One thing to mention, though, is that game starts at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And
things will change.
Yeah, once again, here are all the play. Then tune in to 5 minutes from now. Josh and I are going to be over on playback. Luka, LeBron, Cat, Desmond Bane, who's a game time decision, Josh Hart, John Collins, Norman Powell, Dante DiVincenzo, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton. All these guys are questionable today. There's a lot of moving parts on the slate. Anything you have exposure to in the later, and I know that like 8 p.m. isn't super late locking games, but all of that is in flux. Any of those players could end up changing. Well, I shouldn't say any of them. Like Tyus Jones, I'm fairly certain I'm going to have a lot of him unless he isn't starting. So I don't think I have 95% of Tyus Jones right now. Shaedon Sharpe, another one. I don't think that's going to change. Bobo doesn't have to start for the Suns. This team is dog shit. He was out of the rotation not all that long ago. Right now, he looks pretty good. Doesn't mean he has to start or anything like that. So definitely some aspects of the slate that could be in flux. So your exposure to Khalil Ware, wouldn't be surprised if that ends up going away as we get closer to lock. Einstein wants to know what are our thoughts on Onyeka Okongwu. Let's see. Yeah, I'm overweight to Okongwu. I've got Okongwu in 26% of lineups. There are so many good-looking center options in the mid-range today. Zach Collins, Chet Holmgren a little bit more expensive, but he fits the bill. Donovan Klingon, he's another one. Onyeka Okongwu, Kelly Olynyk. All of these guys who are priced in the 5K range, I'm overweight to the field to and have 20 to 30% of. Zach Collins, I have a little bit more of than that. I have a little bit over 30%, but a lot of good-looking center options. And then I was still able to get myself to 30% of Jokic as well in my final run of lineups. Just uploaded that, so should be good to go. Yeah, it will be an interesting slate with some of the late breaking news and whatnot. I got to ask you, Matt, have you gotten your lineups in? That's always a big sweat. Is Willie Mack get his lineups in?
I have not, but you know what? I'm going to do a little trick here because I would be remiss if I did not have Nikola Jokic in my lineup. So I am going to just put him in all my lineups right now and lock that from the DraftKings lineup page. And then if I have to play 100%, I got to play 100%.
Yeah, there's
I
no way
think
around
I'm going to
it.
get this done.
There's
There's no way around it. FanDuel's up, but there we go.
You would think from doing shows with EMAC that they change the time of lock every night, and it's like a moving target, and it sneaks up on him. He's like, "Oh my god, the lineups, they have to be done right now." The slate starts at pretty much the same time every night, and he's never prepared for that time.
Allegedly.
Even though on the set we got things like the entry manager where you could run sims and you could just upload, like it takes like 2 clicks of the button. The audience, you guys could all have it. If you sign up for any of our affiliate, you sign up with like Chalkboard or Fanatics, which got added as well to our affiliate. Each one of those sign up for, you get 1 free month. EMAC works here. Believe it, like we don't pay EMAC in money. We pay him in free subscriptions. And then also he gets discounts at the retirement home. Like he gets like, early bird special and stuff like that. And he's still, despite the access of these tools, EMAC has not figured out how to navigate lock.
Now I'm just proving a point. Hands off the keyboard. I am just going with 100% Nikola Jokic from the first game. Let me make sure everybody else is from a later game, because this could come back to haunt me. So please, Jokic, I hope you didn't have the shrimp.
Yeah, now it's because now EMAC has to read the analog clock. That takes longer than digital. There's a lot of issues here. By the way, question from a Discord that just popped up from M Grizzly, who wants to know thoughts on Cade Cunningham. Yeah, so my priority spend up option, it is Nikola Jokic. To me, with Cade Cunningham, who I'm not getting a ton of at the moment, it has less to do with Cade himself and more to do with I like Jokic at center. And then in addition to that, there's a lot of good value guards. Like Tyus Jones is taking up the majority of my point guard spots here. So with that being the case, I'm prioritizing other spend up options. So Cade, for me, he'll just be a guy who's in like 14 or 15% of lineups, unless just an insane amount of value opens up post lock and we need other guys to pay up for. Other than that, Cade Cunningham, just because the values at guard, I kind of have to prioritize paying up at the big man positions.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm going to drop the link join in chat one more time there. That's how you guys can sign up and get single sports sims 1 month at a time for each site that you sign up there, NBA or MLB. Or if you want to raid around to NFL, you can do that as well. But check that out. 2 new additions, Chalkboard and what's
Fanatics.
The other one? Fanatics.
Yeah.
There we go. I have not yet signed up to Fanatics, so I will need to look at that. But we are officially at lock. So that means it's time to go over to playback. So we appreciate everybody watching. Hit that like button on the way out. I want to be able to tell Mama Mac how many likes we got on this show. So hopefully it's well north of 500. Yeah, we're gonna sit and have some nice gelato here. That's our fun for tonight.
All right, relatable. My grandma's here visiting for the weekend, so I've got her over here as well. So I'm gonna go hang out with Josh on playback for the next hour. Hopefully you guys will join us as well. Karl Anthony Towns and Josh Hart, they were also both ruled in. So guys, come join us over in playback. We got just an insane amount of news that's likely to break. I think we're gonna have a lot of value for you guys. So come join us over on playback. For everybody who's leaving, you're making a mistake, but have a good weekend. See you guys in playback.
Later.